You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Hello and welcome to the semifinals here, week 1 of season 4 of the Eternal Tournament Series. I am Truedawn, as always, joined by my wonderful co-host, LocoPojo.
Yeah, we've got Baba versus Unearthly for you today. Elysian Midrange, a deck after my own heart, versus Unearthly's extremely unusual and extremely wonderful Rakano Plate. I'm looking forward to seeing how these two decks clash against each other.
Yeah, we've seen both of these in action earlier in the day, both doing well, obviously, to get to this point. And this matchup is pretty interesting because I think that Unearthly deck building choices are going to pay off in a matchup like this because Bebemav's is pretty weak to flyers. It's not like cold to them. He has the Scorpion Wasps. She does have 4 of those, but there is a lot of value to be gained from building up a Voltron against this type of deck.
Yeah, this is one of the weakest particular decks for hunting Teriax to go up against. I do like this card in Elysian midrange, but one of the reasons it doesn't see a lot of play is because you can pop it out and then it'll immediately get torched, and that can be quite a problem here. Yeah, overall, I think that Baba might have a pretty good chance here. Cerso can be a solid card against a lot of Rakano, and Sandstorm Titan certainly presents a lot of a threat of as well. So if you can get enough big stuff down and the vanquishes or torches don't apparate for Unearthly, there are some ways that this game goes in Bobomob's favor.
Yeah, and the Scorpion Wasps do help. It makes Silvering Familiar worse, but Champion of Glory still super good. Predatory Carnosaur is probably going to be relevant as well. I think Unearthly actually needs to get underneath Bobomob's. I don't think that the just hang out and build Voltron plan is actually going to be good in this matchup, further looking at the deck list. But I still think that he certainly has a lot of good tools in this matchup. And Babamov's also, this is a matchup that can certainly go either way. I'd probably give the edge to Unearthly, but not by a lot.
Yeah, I think it's going to be dependent a lot on these first 2 games. The sideboards for Baba might end up helping him out quite a bit against the deck. Like, he does have quite a few answers. He has Lumen Defenders and Decays and some other interesting things that will help him out against the aggro archetype. But if he just gets steamrolled over the first 2 rounds, then it's going to be really, really hard for him to come back and win the remaining 3 just off of his sideboards. You have to get pretty lucky to beat an aggro deck 3 times in a row, even if you have the right answers to it.
All right, and here we go into game 1 of the semifinals. We see Unearthly has pretty good hand, and Babamob's is a little bit slower.
Yeah, we got the Initiative Sands on 1. We will see if Unearthly decides to opt for a similar type of punish for the last game. We saw previously an Initiate come up against a Ronin where the Initiate attacked in, and Unearthly chose to block, and that ended up really being bad for the Shimmerback deck that was trying to run out.
We saw Unearthly had the choice between torching the Initiate or playing the Oni Ronin on that turn, elected for the Oni Ronin. This is the higher upside play. If they have a 3-drop, it's pretty bad for you. But if their hand is 4 drops, or like in this case, 5 and 6 drops, then not killing the Initiate doesn't matter as much. And again, Unearthly electing to not play anything. That's a reasonable play because if their follow-up is Sandstorm Titan, the Torch allows the Champion of Glory to attack through the Sandstorm Titan anyway, so the card they're ramping into doesn't matter. This turn, I would certainly expect to see the Torch used.
Yeah, it can kill the Initiate and give you a little bit of an advantage. Unearthly might just actually opt for the Oni Ronin to trade into the Initiate, and it looks like Babamob's is strongly signaling that he wants to cast something this turn, so Unearthly's going to go ahead and throw that torch anyways.
And doing nothing and then not attacking definitely heavily telegraphs to Unearthly that Babamob's has a bunch of expensive stuff in his hand, nothing to do yet, makes it so the Initiate is a high priority target, and Unearthly does pull the trigger. Unearthly has a lot of options, or 2 options this turn, both of which are very good.
He's got a lot of the ideal cards that he wants in his hand. Shogun's Scepter sets up a really ridiculous endurance unit. Babamov's primary answers to these are going to be things like Permafrost, and that's really not going to help him all that much. I think there's actually very few answers for Babamov's in the deck that can help him in this situation.
Predatory Carnosaur can currently trade with the champion, but there are 2 cards in Unearthly's hand that change that math a lot.
Yeah,
and we do see the bigger one coming down.
We do end up with the Deep Forge Plate, so Mavs really doesn't have a single answer once it gets that big. Scorpion Wasp doesn't do it. Permafrost can't do it. This is like a big weakness of the Elysian deck against plate. This is a reason why you might want to run like polymorphs in your sideboard on occasion.
I mean, it's interesting because even polymorph doesn't do anything. The frog retains the deep forge play. It's just like, I think that Praxis Displacer is probably the best route. Because if they ever put a plate on a Champion of Glory, like, that's it. Like, that's your out to it. You either need a big enough Predatory Carnosaur, which is unlikely, or Praxis Displacer. But in either case, like, Elysian's just very weak to quick draw endurance overwhelm creatures.
Hard to let it build that far out of control. Can be very, very tough for you. So we aren't going to see any sideboards. We are going to go ahead and see these guys match up against each other for round 2. And once again, like we need to see Baba Mavs actually make some plays here if he wants to take things out in the sideboards. I think winning 3 in a row, again, pretty hard.
I think that this matchup is actually going to be heavily reliant on Unearthly's draws. If Unearthly is able to Voltron up a Champion of Glory, I'm not sure what Bob Mavs can do. But if Unearthly is forced to go in on a normal Flyer, Silvering Familiar, something without quick draw, then Bob Mavs has like Permafrosts, Scorpion Wasps, a lot of stuff to deal with that, and may actually be able to stabilize against such threats.
Hard sell. Yep, so we have Temple Scribe as a definite card coming out here. It does set up for the False Prince as well. So with the banner here, Temple Scribe can get False Prince out early, and then you can play Sandstorm Titan. Alternatively, you could play the Friendly Wisp here and set up for Sandstorm Titan later.
Yeah, it's actually interesting to not see the Friendly Wisp on the previous turn, because you can draw a card with Scribe whenever. You have to like kind of order the Friendly Wisp in a particular way to get value from it. So now like Bob Mavs is going to be in this weird spot for the next several turns where if he wants to draw cards from this Wisp, he has to like essentially time walk himself, which as we see him like to do this turn.
Yeah, Unearthly's hand is pretty wretched. I'm actually surprised that Bob Mavs isn't pushing him harder on this. Crownwatch Cavalry is just not a card that you want to be playing, but he does need something to put like weapons on. So he could put like a Hammer of Might on there, but with the Permafrost, that's a lot of damage being pushed.
We're probably
Sandstorm Titan draws some cards, so
we're probably going to see the desperation play that I've been forced to make, unfortunately, a couple months myself, where you scepter a Permafrosted unit to get an Oni Ronin, and then you can pump up the Oni Ronin. But
you can
forge plate off the top
of the Permafrost, yeah. So
changes the calculus.
So he's got 7 damage here, and he's starting to stymie the actual offense. If he can equip up some Hammers of Might, he can really start pushing through for a lot of damage. But Cerso's probably... Actually, Cerso's completely unhelpful here. So...
Yeah, because it turns the 2/2 into a 2/2.
Baba Mavs choosing to just attack all the way through this. He can play 2 big units this turn and continue to push against Unearthly. I think that's definitely a smart choice, although Shogun Scepter will present even more blockers for Unearthly.
Everything is overwhelmed, so
just
I guess to go wide around it. So Unearthly almost stabilizing after a pretty horrific draw, but Bob Mavs able to assemble enough board to go around the giant Deep Forge Plate creature. So we will be moving into sideboards for both players. We see we've looked at both players' sideboards. We can look specifically at what they're potentially bringing in this game. On the side of Bob Mavs, he has the Infinite Hourglass, Backlash, Lightning Storm's Decay, Polymorph, Looming Defender, Striking Snake, and Passage. What of these things do you like this matchup, LocoPojo?
Yep. I'm actually a big fan of Infinite Hourglass against the Rakano style decks because it means you can stay offensive with cards like Cerso and also like have them on defense to deal with the bigger stuff. But I'm not sure if it's going to work that well here because primarily what Unearthly is doing is generating a lot of flyers and trying to push over your Sandstorm Titans. I think overall, I'm definitely into the cards that give him a lot of health, the cards that effectively deal with the flyers and like basically like Polymorph and Decay. I think Lightning Storm's pretty solid. I'm really pretty fond of most of the cards in his sideboard with the exception of Passage of Ages, which I just feel is very, very slow. And even though it does have the right stuff to deal with Shogun Scepter, Hammer, and Deep Forge Plate, I'm a little iffy on it.
Yeah, I think it's too expensive as well. It's possible you bring it in. We saw it in the other. I like it out of Shimmer Pack because Shimmer Pack is able to chump block, and like their plan is to get up to that much mana. So a 6-drop isn't that big of a deal when your signature card is 8 mana. But in this deck, it's a lot more proactive. Bob is a little bit lower to the ground. He doesn't really want to get up to like 6, 7 mana. He can, but doesn't like actively want to do so. So there's certainly a bigger cost to a card like that in this deck than there would be in Shimmer Pack. It is certainly powerful. It's definitely worth consideration. It may be good enough to still bring in, but it is certainly a cost to have another 6-mana card in this deck.
I'm enjoying looking at this from the side of Babamov because all of his cards are actually in Italian now that Eternal has those extra language options. So we get to see some cool like Italian names like Caminator dell'Alba, which apparently means Dawnwalker, and Decomposizione.
I'm particularly fond of Passaggio di Secoia.
Titano Tempesta di Sabbia, Titan Tempest of Sand.
Vespa Scorpion. It's all great. I love this.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of good stuff there. So yeah, it's very enjoyable. In any case, we're gonna go probably like mess around with my language options once I get Eternal booted up again. So we have Jack coming in on the plate deck for Unearthly. I think that's a pretty solid answer if you're playing against the more mid-range archetypes. Always glad to see Jack in here. Looking forward to seeing how that works. We have the Hammers and Deep Forge plates are staying in. I think Unearthly's still got a pretty good chance to win this, although now that it's 1-1, Babamov does have a lot of exceptional sideboard options against the more aggro options.
Yeah, he gets to bring out a lot of the cards that are underwhelming, gets to streamline his deck, gets to determine how many expensive cards he wants. Having that kind of agency over your reactive elements when you are on like the one who is forced to respond to what your opponent's doing is certainly valuable. Unearthly does also get stuff of his own. That doesn't matter. I think we saw a couple of Vanquish come in, Soulfire Drake, Jack. All of those cards are great. So we will see who gets the better end of it as we are likely to move into game 3 shortly.
Yeah, should be a pretty fun round. So we are opening up that game now. They are sending out the invites and getting into the game. Let's go.
Tip challenge has been issued, and we will get in there momentarily. And we did see the Passage of the Eons and the Babamov come in, so it'd be cool to see if we get to see a Passage of the Eons do some work. If he gets to cast it, it's probably going to be great. May or may not be able to cast it, though.
Some Permafrost, Temple Scribe. Oh, that's a Decay right there. Looks pretty solid. So an early hand looks pretty solid, and I'm fairly excited about it. But overall, I'm not sure what else is going on here.
Yep. Unearthly's forced to. This is one of those games where Unearthly's going to be forced to go in on Silvering Familiar. At least it looks that way. And if Babamov draws a Scorpion Wasp, then the House of Cards falls down for Unearthly.
Silverwing Familiar looks solid. I think that's pretty exciting. From there, we have Deep Forge Plate, Shogun Scepter. Yeah, you know, looks pretty great. Vanquish looks lovely. I don't know. I think Unearthly's got a pretty sizably good hand here, and Babamov's just hasn't hit any of the mid-range staples that he needs at the moment.
Yeah, the way things are currently playing out, Unearthly's in good shape. He gets to Hammer of Might this Silver Familiar, gets to get value. But if Babamov able to draw a Scorpion Wasp, like that's the important thing to draw, is Scorpion Wasp. But if he doesn't draw one, then he's gonna have a bad time.
Now comes the important question. Do you Permafrost to pop the Aegis and then Decay, or do you Decay to pop the Aegis and then Permafrost? Because one option leaves you vulnerable to Deep Forge Plate, but the other one locks down the unit a little bit better against other hammers.
And now this is a big deal because now this Silvering Familiar is so big that it kind of, even Scorpion Wasp isn't big enough, because if Unearthly is able to play Deep Forge Plate, but we will see the Crystallize able to break the Aegis, Permafrost coming down, so now, at least on board, Babamov is stabilized, but if Unearthly draws a power for this Deep Forge Plate, bad news, he didn't, though.
Babamov has the Decay for the Deep Forge Plate, which is helpful, but that's still not going to answer the fact that that thing is a 9/9. Like, I think that Babamov is in a lot of trouble here. Unearthly will draw power eventually, and when that happens, that Silverwing Familiar is definitely going to go for a ride.
He's also going to be able to diversify his Silver Wings. Like, both of these are going to be things that need to be answered. He's going to be able to Scepter this one, and then like potentially Deep Forge Plate the other one. So there's a lot going on for Unearthly here.
Yeah, we have a Scepter here that's a little bit of extra health, which means that Bob-ombs can't effectively outrace Unearthly, especially with that 5/5 on the board. I think that this is probably the game. Unearthly can't quite to seal things up, and Bob-ombs is certainly not going to recover in time. Throwing the decay early is also just really not that good.
Yeah, now that he's just wide open to this Deep Forge Plate, although I understand why you'd make that play. Oblo certainly looks okay, although you're going to play the power first?
Probably want that extra power first yet. Quite. 8, and then just holding on to the other 2 cards, threatening more decays.
Yeah, now this is just too much damage. Just hit the A button. I like Unearthly's just piecemeal, just jam.
All right.
All right, so that will be the conclusion of Game 3. Unearthly goes up 2-1, and we'll have match point.
So, should be a difficult climb for Bob-ombs at this point. It is possible that Unearthly's deck can fall down twice, but it is a pretty reliable deck overall. Like, he's got a lot of stuff going on in it that's pretty straightforward. The main thing that he doesn't want to do is draw hands full of weapons. If he does that, then he's in a lot more trouble against the mid-range deck. But mid-range is giving him enough time to establish those Deep Forge Plates, and then it doesn't have great answers to them. So I think that this might end up going in Unearthly's favor at some point.
And this is a great draw from on Unearthly's side. You have 2-drop into Scepter into Hammer of Might. Excellent curve from Unearthly. And unfortunately, Bob-ombs is a little bit of awkwardness. He's going to need to hit a power.
Yep, this looks not great for him. If he does hit the 3rd power, then he easily hits the 4th, and that 4th is going to be blue no matter what. So that's good. So he is going to be able to set up for turn 4. Turn 5 is going to be a little bit more interesting. I'm curious to see how good these Lumen Defenders are going to be. They certainly don't defend against a lot of things. Like, the main risk here is that they aren't very good against the Recano Outlaws or the Champion of Glories or any of the flyers.
Yeah.
They give him a little bit of extra health, but they don't really defend against these guys once they get big.
And this is certainly the awkwardness on the Elysian side. The quick draw creatures are really hard to deal with. The endurance creatures are hard to deal with. Like, a lot of your interaction as Elysian deals with like one type of creature but not the other. And it's just really hard to have answers that are actually able to deal with everything.
Yep. The Titan does have a pretty solid setup here. Unfortunately, if Unearthly happens to have a torch or something like that, it's very hard to make this attack, and the Mono Outlaw just keeps getting bigger, which necessitates some pretty strong chump blocks.
It's interesting on Unearthly also the option that turn to attack in. If they block a Titan, you torch it, and then that allows him to also extend out Champion of Glory. But he just wanted to shovel in the Armor Smith, or I'm on the Recano Outlaw rather. Is making a giant Voltron.
I think I've definitely changed my mind about Passage of Eons here. I think it's a very solid card against Unearthly's particular brand of deck. There's just like have some sort of evasive ability that makes them fairly hard to deal with chump blockers, which is what Elysian's very good at. Like, Elysian has like huge meat walls, and if you can actually normalize Unearthly's units for a turn or two, then that's going to really put a damper in his.
Yeah, and we saw that formula earlier in the tournament where an Elysian deck was able to just piecemeal chump block and then build up to a board. Like, Shimmerpack played the role of Passage of the Eons where it took away the thing's keywords. So I think that is certainly a game plan that Elysian can look to if they're trying to beat decks like this.
See a silence on the Sandstorm Titan, preventing the endurance from occurring. At this point, Bob-ombs can continue to attack with the Sandstorm Titan, but is likely to lose it to the Valkyrie Enforcer, unless Unearthly decides to push damage in the air, which I think is also reasonable. Bob-ombs can Scorpion Wasp the... This is a pretty clear signal that the 5/5 is going to get Scorpion Wasped. You can also play Lumen Defender and continue to sort of push and also gain health. But losing
the Krevlach Cavalry is a thing. We'll probably see that going on Ronin, just so he has 3 things that need to be answered.
Yeah, it could go on pretty much any of them. I think the larger that quick draw unit is, the worse things are. If he's on the Valkyrie Enforcer, that's a pretty big slip up from an Earthly, I'd say.
Yeah.
That's a fairly strong signal for Scorpion Wasp here, and now he's just going to lose the Valkyrie and that huge 9/9 bonus.
Yeah, he knows his opponent plays 4. It's probably just worth. It's something I've noticed with an Earthly's play. He usually just makes the most giant possible thing, and sometimes it's right, but there's a lot of cases where you just want to diversify your threats and present several things that your opponent needs to kill. So even though the Oni Ronin would have likely traded with the Lumen Defender, then you still have the 9/9 Crown Witch Cavalry and no longer has to deal with the Lumen Defender. So it's putting a lot of pressure on your opponent, asking a lot of them.
We know Unearthly still has that torch, but Babamov's does have a really nice trick here where he can decay the Recano Outlaw and then block with the Sandstorm Titan, and it would almost work.
Yeah.
At this point, he's got enough stuff defending on the ground. He's just worried about what happens in the air and whether or not this quick draw unit can get through, which just thus far it's certainly doing.
And if Unearthly had one less torch, then the decay plan would actually work because he is going to go for this line of double torch and then attack. But that still does leave the 9/9.
I think that actually works out for him. He can block the 9/9, decay the Recano Outlaw, and be rid of a quick draw unit that is otherwise like really threatening to him. I think that's way better than playing the Scorpion Wasp and blocking the 9/9. So this is not going to go that well for Unearthly. I think that overall, like, he's actually in a tougher spot now.
I mean, he still does get to kill the Titan and keep the 4/3 in play because of the third torch, but
I wasn't looking at his hand. Yeah. Okay. Third torch doesn't make a. Yeah, third torch means he's in a lot of trouble. He's probably not going to be able to recover from that.
Now it's the False Prince blocks the 4/3 potentially, and Scorpion Wasp checks the 9/9. We do see the weapon come into play off the top from an Earthly, which does change the calculus, but until that point, there was hope.
Yeah, a 10/8, a 9/9, and a 2/1. Scorpion Wasp blocks the 9/9, so that's a bit of damage out of the window. The 5/5 blocks the 2/1, so that's just a little bit that you get for free. And then Unearthly doesn't have that many ways to just surprise push damage beyond the standard Deep Forge plate. So Lumen Defender feels like a mistake here. Maybe not. Attacking for 5, then Lumen Defender.
Yeah, just chump block. Maybe you win the race. Like maybe this Crystallize could actually go the distance.
As long as he can keep pushing for 5 a turn, I think it's not unreasonable. It's just a matter of whether or not that Deep Forge plate hits for Unearthly.
Yeah, Unearthly needs to never hit the Deep Forge plate. The card is not remotely beatable.
So it seems pretty unlikely that he's not going to hit it. Champion of Glory, that's a lot of bad stuff for Babamaz. It looks like he's going to be going home a semifinalist.
He's not dead yet. He's like, if Unearthly draws like depleted power, yeah, that's a thing. I mean, that means the plate's next turn
hurts a little bit. So now Babamaz just needs Frog to chump block. Wisdom of the Elders gets him a little bit of something, but no, yeah, with the Deep Forge plate, that's definitely lethal.
We will see the Recano Outlaw come across for roughly 1 million and send Babamov home. Good run by Babamov, though. Congratulations to Unearthly for moving on to the finals.
Yeah, Recano finals should be fun times. Has Unearthly managed to win one of these yet? I know he's placed finals.
I feel like he has. I feel like he won one recently. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he has. Yep, he's won a bunch of them. Yeah.
Apparently he's won weekly every season, so looks like he's got a chance at this one as well. So.
And we do actually have the other side of the bracket still in progress. We will be moving over to that match. Hythar on Big Combre versus Flash on Burn Queen. This is one of the matchups where Big Combre is actually has a good shot against the Queen deck. Should be able to present a good enough defense, but we'll see how things play out as we move here into Game 3. Currently, players tied at 1-1. And we have a Dawn Walker attacking into Empty Bird.
Yeah, it looks like Flash has a reasonable amount of removal, but he doesn't have anything to progress with, which is not what you really want to see with the Stone Scar style. Like, usually you want to have some sort of unit that you can actually hold down on the board, and then you want to remove all of the threats and impediments to that unit. If you're just playing your burn against a Combre deck, you're probably not favored to win, and Hythar's sitting on a lot of advantage.
Yeah, he just has a handful of gas, and Flash is just in a position where a lot of his cards require creatures. Like the burn doesn't matter unless he can do damage to his opponent. The rapid shot doesn't do anything unless he's attacking with a creature. So I think that this game has gotten to the point where Haidar has pretty solidly stabilized. And just
Yeah, it
you
looks
see
like-
the torch go on that Awakened Student when he has the Suffocate. Torch got to go face, man. Smork.
I like it just fine. I think I guess there's not really anything in Hydar's deck that's like more toughness than it is power, with the exception of Combre Healer. But it is Combre Healer that you want to answer with the Suffocate. So there's a possibility that Flash can get a little bit of value out of that.
I'd like to see one of the giant idiots come down, like either Reality Warden or Sandstorm Titan, whatever you prefer. But I want to start putting the pressure on Flash, just get this over with, and we do see the Reality Warden come down.
I'm curious about that. Like, it feels like you don't really want to take extra damage from Champion here, but I guess he's just pushing. So with like 13 damage on Hyther's clock, or no, it's 11 damage on Hyther's clock. That's way more than Flash can represent, even if he is pushing the cross with his 5/3.
Yeah.
So knocks the Dawnwalker off. That's another 5 damage and 7 here. And then it's just up to Flash to find a little bit of extra push. But with the Combre Healer, that's probably not terribly likely.
Yeah, Hyther just wants to set up lethal. He's saying, you can't do 14 to me this turn, which actually is not accurate. If Flash draws another bird spell, the rapid shot with the Champion of Cunning is lethal with an Obliterate.
Yep. Yeah, you just need like rapid shots and torches. Like the damage is there. I'm really skeptical of attacking with the Reality Warden, but it looks like he just gave Flash no time to actually progress that damage. So looks like it went just fine, and Hyther will be going on to the finals to face off against Unearthly.
No, there's it's 2-1. 2-1. We got one more.
Oh, the 2-1? Game 3, right? Yes, I was thinking that game 3. Yeah, but no, best of 5. So we've got another game to go.
Yep. Flash still has an opportunity to come back. And I was wrong. I did the math wrong. It was Obliterate is too short of lethal. But there's still things. Flame Blast, I think, does it. If they don't.
Progress. Okay, so Hyther looking at a nice early aggressive bit. He's got the Vanquish for Champion of Chaos, but he probably has some issues with this Argenport Instigator. So we'll see exactly what he can play out and whether or not that Awakened Student can live long enough to be a threat.
Yeah, this is an excellent draw on the side of Flash, and Hyther is going to be playing a lot of like depleted power. So it's possible he just gets run over by this swarm of Bandit Queens.
This is pretty aggressive from Flash. Like you have the Argenport into the Champion of Chaos, into the Bandit Queen, into the Bandit Queen. That alone is just often like it spells victory. Like there isn't that many ways that goes wrong. But if he doesn't draw his 4th power, then Flash is going to be a little bit slow, and Hyther might not be able to generate quite as much.
Yeah, Hyther's draw is like pretty good as well. He gets to go Awakened Student into Titan into Ironthorn. Like he's presenting blockers. So if Flash stumbles, it's not going to be enough pressure.
We have a 3/3 Awakened Student here. I think that the block is not unreasonable. Like you certainly don't really want to deal with like rapid shots. It looks like Hyther is going to try to race out the Stonescar deck, and I'm really curious to see how that goes for him.
Well, it's reasonable to not block with the Awakened Student because you know it's going to become a 4/4. Now it can block now it doesn't trade with the Argenport, just straight blocks it. If they have a rapid shot, they have a rapid shot. You just have to run them out of those cards. You just want to like get profitable blocks.
End up okay. Yeah, he's got the block here. Still could get the rapid shot.
And I kind of would have liked to see a double block there because the attack very obviously represents a rapid shot. And if you double block, the Sandstorm Titan dies instead, but so does the Argenport. So I don't know how much more valuable the Sandstorm Titan is than the Awakened Student when the Awakened Student is becoming a 5/5. I don't think the answer is very.
I don't know. You do want to be able to attack in for that 5 damage a turn so that you can actually put some counter pressure on the Stonescar deck. Like, if he can put him on a 5-turn clock just by attacking in every turn, then that will eventually force him to be defensive. Yeah. And once you turn defensive as a Stonescar deck, you're in a lot of trouble.
Being able to attack does matter, but the 3/3 is going to hang out and play. But the 3/3 is likely to get colded by these giant creatures, so yeah, it's probably fine.
Martial Ironthorn's got to be played as a meaningless meat wall, which is certainly not unreasonable. Like, he does get the 5/5 setup here. It is going to make Great Parliament probably pretty sad if it becomes a top deck draw, but I think that Hythar sitting on his Vanquish feels pretty confident that having a bunch of big units will generally slow Flash's roll enough that he can push through. And it looks like he's even going to get the power here.
Yeah, he's doing a good job of making a brick wall. This Desert Marshal's great. The Vanquish also can deal with the Champion of Chaos if he's so inclined. Flash being choked here on mana is like, he has lethal several times over in hand. He just can't get it out.
Yeah, Desert Marshal can't really do much here because against a rapid shot, but hey, so like unfortunately the order of operations does not allow Desert Marshal to be ambushed after the rapid shot.
And then we'll see the play that I suggested earlier. He's going to be okay with the Sandstorm Titan dying, gets to retain Marshal, gets to actually make sure the 3/3 dies.
Yep, I think going to be pretty hard to say which one Flash is going to want to kill. He goes for the Sandstorm Titan because it is the bigger threat in the short term, but in the long term, Ironthorn's definitely going to be pretty scary.
Especially with that Obelisk now making it a 7/7, Desert Marshal's now a large creature. And we might actually build up to the Plague Wind button on Marshal Ironthorn.
Flash hasn't seen a lot of units that he really wants to play here. His Obliterate's no longer useful against Marshal Ironthorn, so he really just needs that extra influence so he can start playing his bigger spells. His hand's kind of choked. He has 2 Flame Blasts. He has a lot of like aggression. Attack here might not be a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's pretty, like, we see the Desert Marshal, so it's going to be a really bad attack, but even assuming they have nothing, I think trading your champion for 7 damage, given the texture of your hand, given all this burn, I think is something you need to do.
That's to play the champion, the queen down as meat, which I don't necessarily disagree with. You do need to play it down. You need to play something down to develop out your board, and the second Bandit Queen will be a lot better as a result of this, but he's going to have a hard time rushing in for enough damage, and he's just not drawing the cards that he needs to win this.
Yeah, I think he has these burn spells. If he actually, like, if he alphas here, he's going to deal, through the Desert Marshal, 7 damage, so it actually makes it so these 3 burn spells are lethal if he's able to cast them in a timely fashion before he dies.
Yeah, the problem is that there's no way that he casts them all before he dies. Ironthorn puts him on a 3-turn clock, which means that 1, 2, 3 is Obliterate, Flame Blast, and then you are dead.
Well, the Ironthorn's not going to necessarily be attacking immediately. Like, there's still going to be an Oniron and a Bandit Queen on the table after this attack. The Desert Marshal trades off, so he can't really afford to race just yet. The Parliament changes that, however, but I do think Flash gave himself the best shot to win.
He tried, and unfortunately, it looks like he's probably out of the game now. That Obelisk is really just a scary threat, and with Vara's Favor being his only option here, I think he just didn't quite have the cards that he needed. Vara's Favor doesn't even give him the triple fire for the Flame Blasts.
Yep. So. We saw Flash had a pretty explosive draw, was unable to hit power to curve out the way he needed to curve out, and then Hythar was just able to buy enough time to get to his top end and close things out with a whole Parliament of Owls. That's what that card's called, that, right? A group of owls called a Parliament.
Yeah, that's probably correct. I think that is correct. I believe it's a Parliament of Owls.
It's either that or a Congress. It's some like legislative body.
I can look it up right now.
But in any case,
it's either a Parliament or a stare of owls. Yeah, a stare of owls. Stare.
I could have sworn it was like
now we know
Congress or something.
The next card for Direwolf to print is the stare of owls. And
shows my knowledge, my avian knowledge. So that is our semifinals. We will have Hythar versus Unearthly in the finals. We will be bringing that to you shortly. Congratulations to Flash for coming as far as he did. Good showing. And we will be seeing the conclusion of our tournament in just a moment after this short break.
Soon.